A couple of weeks ago, I set up the DVR to tape an old movie called The King of Kings. And I thought it was The King of Kings that was made in 1961. And when I went to watch it, it was The King of Kings that was made in 1927. And it was a silent movie. And it was on the Classic Movie Channel, and they always have somebody come out and talk about the movie before they show it. And I became very curious because the commentator was talking about Cecil B. DeMille. And as soon as you hear the name Cecil B. DeMille, maybe the first thing that comes into your head is Cast of 1,000. In fact, I thought that was part of his name. Cecil B. DeMille, Cast of 1,000. And so I was listening to this, and Cecil B. DeMille in 1927 actually had the cast sign a contract that during the making of the movie and 5 years after the movie, that they would not play ball, would not play cards, would not frequent nightclubs, would not go swimming, would not drive a convertible. 1927. Hollywood. You know, this just intrigued me. And so I did some research, and every morning Cecil B. DeMille would lead the actors and crew in a solemn recital of the Lord's Prayer. And he did everything to make this movie as holy as he could. And so my interest was piqued, and I started to watch it. Well, I'm not into silent movies, but it was a biblical movie, and so I became curious. How are they going to portray the life of Christ? Would it be biblical? And what I found as I went along is that they would just take scriptures and they would insert them into the movie. And it wasn't the scripture that was part of that account, but it was biblical, you know? And this reached 800 million viewers. And most Hollywood biblical movies end up being like that. Now, I'm not really here to talk about the movie today, but there was one account in the movie that sort of struck me with this. And it was the account of the woman caught in adultery. And I was just curious as to what they would do, because, you know, when we read that account in John 8, you know, it talks about the scribes and Pharisees bringing the woman to Jesus at the temple. And it was a trap. They were trying to trick him. They were paying attention to part of the law, but not all of the law. And at one point they said to Jesus, they reminded him that the Mosaic law demanded her to be stoned to death. But they said, "But what do you say?" they asked him. And at this point, Jesus knelt down and wrote something. This is the only account in the Bible where Jesus wrote something, and we don't know what he wrote. And so I was curious when they got to that point in the movie, what they were going to do. So Jesus knelt down to write, and it was funny because somebody spilt sand in the temple right before this. And Jesus knelt down, and he was writing, and what they did is they had the people with the stones, sort of one by one, this is the way they portrayed it, look over Jesus' shoulder. And Cecil B. DeMille showed in the sand, whether it was Aramaic or Hebrew, I can't tell. But you know, you couldn't tell what it said. But you could see this word in the sand. And then, as this person with the stone was looking over Jesus' shoulder, Cecil B. DeMille had to go out of focus and come back in with the English word. And the first person to look over Jesus' shoulder saw thief. And he went away. And then it showed the next person come up, looking over Jesus' shoulder, and they did the same thing, the foreign language and then the English, and it said, murderer. And this was a silent movie, so you know how they overacted with their eyes and everything. And then there was actually a Pharisee looking over Jesus' shoulder, and when the word changed, it said adulterer. The very people that brought this woman to be condemned by Jesus in this trap was an adulterer. And you know, it just hit me what this account was about. This account was about Jesus. We don't need to know what he wrote. That's not important. We don't need to know what the law was concerning this lady caught in adultery. If you want to talk about the cast, we're the woman caught in adultery because we've all sinned. But this is about Jesus. The fact that he knows our hearts. The fact that he knows our minds. I think sometimes as humans we forget about that. You know, we read this account and we don't realize that right now Jesus knows what we're thinking. Right now Jesus knows what we're feeling in our heart. And every one of those people that had stones, and every one of those people that sinned, when Jesus went to the cross, he died for them. And everyone sitting here, and we've all held stones, he died for us. Let us pray.